Hey, greetings everyone. Welcome to the Lido Twitter Spaces. Today we'll be discussing a recent proposal submitted to the Lido Research Forum. This is co-authored by Sam, Eugene, Hasu, Izzy, Vasily, and others around a dual governance model incorporating both stETH and Lido. And today we're joined by Sam Kozin, a smart contract developer at Lido, Hasu, which is a strategy lead at Flashbots and research collaborator at Paradigm, and Nick Cannon, VP of Growth at Gauntlet. Before we kick off, let's start with a small round of introductions on who you are and where your interest in this proposal came from. Sam, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam. I'm a core developer at Lido. So my main interest around this proposal is like to make the governance better for the underlying blockchain for our stakers. So yeah, I think given that the amount of stake that we currently have, something has to be changed with how our protocol is governed. So that's my main reason for submitting this proposal.
All right, thanks, Sam. Hasu?
Yeah, hi, I'm Hasu. Thanks, Frondifer, for the introduction. What's the question?
Oh, just an introduction. You probably don't need an introduction, I guess, with all the audience here. But yeah, if you just wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I can add that I've been interested in DAO governance for a very long time, and that for I think 2 to 3 months now, I'm also working closely with Lido as a strategic advisor. So I've been thinking about Ethereum security for a long time, and so I'm very interested in making sure that Lido can be a staking pool for Ethereum without becoming a risk for the protocol. And so I think the model that we have come up with here is going to be a very interesting precedent in aligning the interests of Ethereum and stakers and the Lido protocol. And so I'm very excited to dive into this today.
All right, thank you, Hasu. And Nick, can you introduce yourself too?
Yeah, definitely. Hey guys, as mentioned, I lead growth for Gauntlet. My team is charged with sort of structuring partnerships and then servicing DAOs. Primary product for us is risk management, which we currently provide to Aave, Compound, and a variety of others. The second of which being incentive optimization, primarily servicing AMMs, other DEXs to sort of increase the utility of their emissions programs. We are very active in governance and delegation across DeFi, as it not only affects the protocols we have engagements with, but just trying to generally advance the decentralized economy. So we try to lend our expertise in financial modeling wherever possible.
Thanks, Nick. All right, so the first question goes to Hasu. What is the problem, and why is there a need for a dual governance framework to solve this problem?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say the problem is that Lido is a protocol that's really close to Ethereum security. Why? Because you can think of it, I mean, so to summarize what Lido does, anyone can stake, can send a stake to Lido, and then Lido stakes it on their behalf with a series of whitelisted node operators. And we also give them a staking derivative that they can use to get liquidity before withdrawals are possible on the beacon chain that they can use as collateral in DeFi, and so on. And so we really make staking, easy and accessible for anyone. But the problem is by giving stake to Lido and then Lido giving it to a series of node operators is that you introduce more parties into this act of staking. And so by having these several parties, you really get into a situation where the different parties might not have one-to-one, the same economic interests. Right? So for the stakers, the actual owners of the stake, it's very clear, like they are very aligned with the Ethereum protocol because they are long ETH and they want to maximize the transaction fees and MEV and so on. But for whoever they delegate to, it's not as clear, right? For example, they don't have they have sort of the expectation of future revenue, and so if that goes away, that's very bad for them. So they do have incentive not to misbehave, but definitely it's like not as clear as with the stakers themselves. And with Lido in the middle, the same thing applies. And so there have been concerns voiced, I would say, by, for example, Ethereum core developers, but also other community participants, that Lido has, because Lido decides which node operators to give the stake to, that they can exert some pressure on making node operators do what Lido wants, for example, and to like. The most extreme case would be, for example, to just stop making blocks in Ethereum, right? Or to reorganize the chain, extract very bad MEV, or censor particular users. And so the way that you, and again, in economics, I think the way that we would frame this is like a principal agent problem. So the principal is the ETH stakers, and they sort of appoint an agent in order to manage their stake, and that's Lido. In this case, represented by the LDO holders who make the decisions in day-to-day governance, and who appoint like the node operator committee and so on. And so the problem that we were trying to solve, so we have these two parties, the principal, which is the stakers, and the agent, which is the LDO holders. How can we align the interests of the two? And so we thought, okay, so we are not really, like in most of the time, this is not really a concern, but what we are really worried about is existential risks for the Ethereum blockchains and for stakers. And so why not just find a way to make sure that these worst things cannot happen? Why? Because we give stakers sort of a last look on every governance decision that's being made. And if they disagree, then they can put in a veto and say this would be against our interest. But we make it sort of sufficiently expensive that they cannot, block sort of any decision that's made, or can sort of grieve the DAO on like its day-to-day operations. It should really be, there needs to be like a certain threshold for when a proposal is sort of actually against the interest of stakers, that it's sort of, there's a certain bar that needs to be passed, but not sort of so much that it can be a grieving factor. And I think we have come up with like a really good balance here. And yeah, that's sort of what I would say is the problem that we need to address.
Awesome. Thank you for that explanation. Sam or Nick, would you like to add anything to that? You don't have to if you want to.
Yeah, I think Hasu explained it pretty clearly. Don't want to add anything. Awesome.
Okay, so the next question is for you, Sam. Could you go over a brief overview of the dual governance proposal and the ins and outs?
Yep, sure. So the dual governance proposal introduces a kind of a dispute and resolution mechanism that sits between governance, I mean LDO governance, and stakers. So governance is powered by LDO token, and stakers are represented by the stETH token. This mechanism doesn't allow stakers to propose changes. Changes can only still be proposed by only LDO holders, but it allows stakers to block changes proposed by the LDO governance if they see that they are misaligned with their interests. So the mechanism is designed to be triggered when LDO governance either becomes captured as a result of some attack, or misaligned with stakers and the network. Also, because this mechanism allows stakers to block governance decisions, it also has the effect of disincentivizing LDO governance from executing decisions that go against the stakers' interests. So how it's being done is that stakers can switch LDO governance into a special adversarial mode that we call veto mode, where no proposal can pass unless explicitly allowed by the quorum of stakers. How they do this is by locking their stETH into a special escrow contract. And they cannot unlock stETH right away. So there is a delay before one can unlock the locked stETH. Once some threshold amount is reached of locked stETH, then the governance switches into this veto mode. And no proposal by LDO holders can pass unless stakers that locked their stETH into the escrow contract vote to lift the veto from the specific proposal. So they still could vote to allow specific proposals to be executed. So this is like the basic mechanics. There are options. It's not that we propose all the options. We just want the community to discuss them. These options are targeted at preventing attacks by both LDO and stETH holders. So one option is expropriating stETH that voted for lifting the veto or not lifting the veto if the majority of stETH holders voted otherwise. So this is aimed at preventing governance griefing and governance capture attacks by making them actually more expensive. Another option, another set of options is targeted at allowing the governance to recover from the state where it is either captured or misaligned with the stakers. Because the basic mechanics, it doesn't allow doing this. So if governance is taking bad decisions, if more than, and this can only be in the case where more than half of LDO belongs to the entities that actually want to take these bad decisions, then there is no way for the governance to stop doing this, right? Because LDO belongs to probably malicious actors. And the question is how to, is there a way to automatically recover from this? And one option of, it's pretty brutal, but still, one option is to burn LDO that voted for a proposal that was vetted. In this case, burning LDO allows, it effectively redistributes governance power to other holders that either abstained from voting for this malicious proposal or they voted against it. So yeah, this is the second option. I think these two are the most important. Also, part of the proposal is discussing the scope. So we don't think that these dual governance mechanics should apply to all decisions. It only should apply to decisions that can potentially harm stakers. And what's left is managing protocol treasury and managing protocol fees in some sane limits, within some sane limits. So that's that's actually it. This is I think this is the mechanism that we are proposing, if to say in short.
Thank you, Sam. And I encourage everyone to hop into our research forum to actually read the proposal in depth. It's very nuanced, and it's hard to explain all this over Twitter Spaces. So I definitely encourage everyone to take a look at that. So the next question is for Nick.
Sorry. Could I add something? This was about dual governance. This is like the main part of the proposal, but we also should mention that in the end, we do want to ossify the protocol, most critical parts of the protocol, those parts that can actually bring that can be exploited to bring harm to stakers and the network. But we cannot do it right now because like the specification of the base protocol of the Ethereum protocol is not yet settled. So we cannot freeze the code. And yeah, but even after that, some governance powers remain, namely selecting validator set or selecting some options parameters of the permissionless validator set. So yeah, even after we ossify the code, this mechanism still makes sense.
I think ossification of the code is interesting as it relates to the scope of dual governance. Is there a world where you extend the scope of dual governance to include things like protocol treasury? Does that make sense, post Capella?
I'm not sure that controlling protocol treasury should be in the scope of dual governance, because there are ways that spending treasury could harm the network, but without control. Actually, the treasury is what is the upside the protocols earns for LDO holders, and I think LDO holders should still be in control of how it's spent and where it's spent. So maybe someone thinks differently.
No, I mean, I completely agree. Like the Lido treasury has no, additional way to harm Ethereum users or the Ethereum network or stakers than literally any other treasury that exists in the world. And so, you can't argue that the Lido treasury should be subject to dual governance, but anyone else who can spend money in the world shouldn't be. So yeah, it's just dual governance basically should be contained to those decisions that can have a direct and strong effect on stakers.
All right, awesome. Thanks for everyone's input. So the next question is for Nick. What are the implications for the Ethereum community and stakers? This includes stETH and ETH staking generally.
I think what I'll comment on is that the aspect I'm closest to these days, not a co-author of this proposal, but what Gauntlet is primarily concerned with is how staked ETH is circulating through DeFi, and most notably being added as collateral assets on Aave. In late February, staked ETH's addition to the protocol saw a pretty quick meteoric rise of borrowing against it. Primarily, this was recursive against ETH, and despite being unwound recently, there's still about 20% of the staked ETH supply lent on Aave. So I think if we assume that most of the staked ETH holders are rational ETH holders seeking liquidity and yield, and they're also reasonably altruistic, seeking to support the future of Ethereum, then it's reasonably safe to assume their goals are constant. What's unclear now, or potentially if this proposal goes through, is how that might alter their objectives or time horizon, right? So adding dual governance complexity makes every staked ETH holder consider the motivations of other staked ETH holders on top of Lido holders and the Lido DAO. I think the mechanisms, in the very long and thorough post are definitely outlined and counter many of those problems that could arise. But there's always unknowns and potential emergent behavior. Sam, maybe you can speak to the longer term implications.
I think the implications for Ethereum community is that that obviously Lido protocol starts posing a little less governance threat of governance risks, right? Because even if LDO governance is captured, this is not the end state. It could be prevented. The outcomes of this could be prevented. For stakers, the main implication is that they get some power. I wouldn't say this is exactly like governance power, like governance token brings, but it's still like some. I wouldn't say a responsibility, but yeah, it's to put this into perspective. I believe that this brings the protocol into a state where that closer to the state that will be after withdrawals are enabled, because even if there is no dual governance and withdrawals are here, stakers can still vote by foot. For example, if they say that if they see that LDO governance starts making bad decisions, they could just unstake and go elsewhere. Given that, yeah, it can be done like momentarily because of the exit queue, but still they can do that, and by this they could actually prevent Lido from doing more harm to the network. Right now, before withdrawals are enabled, stake cannot be withdrawn. So stakers cannot vote by foot, but this mechanism allows them to do something similar that is blocking the malicious proposals from passing. And this is, yeah, I would say this is some responsibility. So I think this is the main implication for stakers.
Awesome, thank you, Sam. The last question is for Hasu or for anyone else who would like to follow. What are the implications for Lido holders? Does this mean less governance power or dilution of power for LDO holders? Or is there more nuance to it?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this question because I've seen a bunch of people ask this after the proposal came out. And in my opinion, also as an LDO Evolve investor, and I'm also working for Lido and have my I'm basically a Lido holder myself. And for me, the proposal is very, very favorable. Why? Because, I mean, as you can see from literally the last 2 months of discussion, just the need to trust, the need for the community and Ethereum developers to trust that Lido doesn't something that will harm Ethereum is very clearly a huge problem for Lido. And if there was some way to prove that this trust, that sort of you don't need to trust Lido, then Lido could safely scale to much bigger size on Ethereum. And that's not just better for Lido and LDO holders, it's also a much better outcome for Ethereum, because then stakers can get maximum liquidity on their staking derivative, and it can actually replace ETH as the base token of Ethereum. And so I think that's a huge incentive, one, for LDO holders. The second is the more governance power you have in your protocol, the more the governance participants are incentivized to exploit governance and extract money from it by doing something that's against the protocol. And the more you have to pay these governors in order to incentivize them to be good stewards and not misbehave. And so I would encourage everyone actually to look into the concept of governance extractable value, or GEV. There's a really great article on it. And so, yeah, these two are basically my main points. The governance is a major cost on protocols, and it's something that we should always, look to minimize as much as possible. So if we have less governance, it will be easier for people to trust us, and it will save us a lot of money that we would need to pay to LDO holders. And Lido can grow much bigger and capture more revenue. And I think in total, that's a complete no-brainer to me that this is the right thing to do if you're an LDO holder.
Awesome. Sam, do you want to add to that, or I just want to be conscious of everyone's time here. We hit the half-hour mark.
I just want to highlight the last part that actually this is the way that allows Lido to grow larger. And in my opinion, it's like without this, Lido couldn't arguably get more stake. And getting more stake means getting more revenue. And I think this is in the interest of all LDO holders. for the protocol to get more revenue. So yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you, Sam. There are a couple community questions that I have, but before I get into that, I just wanted to make sure that our speakers don't. Are there any speakers that'd like to jump off for prior engagements, or can they stick around for a couple more questions?
So I have time. I think it would be great to have a bunch of community questions.
Yep, the same for me.
Okay, awesome. One question is, how does this work with stETH holders and liquidity liquidity pool positions? Is it only applicable to pure stETH, or also stETH held across DeFi?
My answer?
Yeah, go for it.
So as it's formulated, it only works with the plain stETH, not locked in any LP positions. It could be modified to support some LP positions, but there is no way to support any like usage in DeFi because it can only be done on a case-by-case basis. So if we are to support some LPs, like some protocols, then there will be questions which protocols to support and which not. And this is like a hard question because we only have limited resources. So that's why it's not included into the proposal. It is still an option. But yeah, we see this mechanism not as a like regular governance mechanics that is to be applied in a normal conditions. We see this as a mechanics that could prevent like bad conditions from happening. So yeah, it's something not meant to be used on a day-to-day basis, and that's why personally I think that supporting LPs would be nice if it could be done easily, but it's not like the most critical part of the mechanism. But I might be wrong.
I would also add that this will be implemented together with a longer time lock on proposals. So stake ETH holders will have a lot of time in order to withdraw from any, like wind down any positions and withdraw from any DeFi protocols that they're in order to vote against this. And it only requires some amount of stake ETH holders anyway to veto in order to put the protocol in a veto state to begin with. And so I would say it's probably not necessary in the beginning to allow stake ETH that's sitting in DeFi, but it could probably be done if we think it's necessary.
Yeah, another thing is that even if we allow to, for example, some LP tokens to be used, there is still not only time lock on governance decision, but also a time lock on where one could withdraw their like stETH or derivative LP tokens from that escrow. So this would still require holders to sacrifice some optionality and probably yield if they, for example, use their stETH in DeFi. So they will still have to lock it. But yeah.
All right, thank you. The next question could go to anyone. There are several ways that LDO holders could control stETH code upgrades and negatively affect stETH holders. Why not just focus on ossifying these specific attack vectors instead of adding a new layer with this dual stETH LDO governance power?
My answer?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay. So the short answer is that it cannot be done right now because Yeah, for example, we could ossify the part that mints and burns LDO, but two things. First is that we distribute rewards to node operators by minting LDO. So the code has to be able to do that. And for example, there is a mechanism that applies insurance by burning LDO. So the code has to be able to do this. And so, not LDO, sorry, I mean stETH. So, like, as right now, we just cannot prevent the code upgrades. Like, I mean, the upgrades of the main code, because withdrawals are not yet here, and withdrawals will change like the mechanics of stETH, minting, burning, and all that, and so that we cannot ossify this yet. The same goes to the withdrawals contract. Like, withdrawals are not yet here, and we cannot just put some code and hope that it will work in the final state of the network. So we want to ossify these parts, but like the network is not yet there, so we cannot do that.
Got it. Hasu, do you want to add to that?
No, I mean, as I said in my answer about, is this good for LDO holders? I hope it became clear that whenever you have the possibility to ossify something, then it's always the cheapest thing to do. And so if we had the ability, we would greatly, prefer that over, just hardening the governance. But unfortunately, it's not possible, as Sam has laid out. So whenever a new, step in the ossification of Lido becomes possible, we will immediately take it. But we also want to make sure in the meantime that Lido is maximally aligned with stakers and Ethereum. And so that's why we are taking these measures.
All right, thank you. So I have one more question, and that about wraps it up for the community questions. There's a section in the proposal about burning rogue LDO after a successful veto. And someone just wanted further explanation about what that is and why that mechanism would be in the dual governance proposal. If someone could take that for me.
I already explained this briefly today, but like, it's not like the proposed option, it's an option to be discussed. So the main idea is to allow governance to recover from the captured state or from misaligned state. So why burn? Because burn is the only way to redistribute the power from the malicious actor to other actors. And like, the trigger for burning is when a proposal that's voted, that's supported by some LDO holder gets vetted by the stakers. In this case, there is like one optional thing that could be done is to burn LDO tokens of of all participants that supported this proposal. This, as I said, redistributes the governance power and allows the governance to basically unstuck from the captured or misaligned state. This is like a controversial option because what it actually does is gives stETH holders ability to burn LDO. So this may not be the best option for LDO holders, but it has both upsides and downsides. So I just invite everyone to discuss it in the proposal thread. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you, Sam. So that about wraps it up. Thank you to our speakers for making time to answer these questions, and to the community for providing these questions. Please give your input and feedback in our governance forum if you have them. Lido is committed to being completely transparent as we tackle these hard problems in DeFi governance. And this is just the first of what will be a series of spaces and community engagement about proposals and about governance that's happening in Lido. So if you have any follow-up questions, please hop in our Discord. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone for showing up and listening. And yeah.